Captain Jake Morrison stared at the screen in front of him. The massive shape floating in space looked nothing like any ship he had ever seen. It was dark and silent, drifting between the stars like a ghost from another time. "How big is that thing?" Jake asked his crew. Chief Science Officer Lisa Grant checked her instruments twice before answering. "Sir, it's over 3 miles long. That makes it 10 times bigger than our ship." The NSS Liberty was humanity's newest exploration vessel. Jake and his crew of 40 had been searching for new worlds when their sensors picked up the strange object. They had been in space for 6 months looking for planets humans could live on. Instead, they found something much more interesting. "Any signs of life?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "No life signs. No power readings either. But sir, the metal it's made from doesn't match anything in our database. This ship is old. Really old." Engineering specialist Ryan Cooper looked up from his station. "Captain, I'm getting some weird readings. The ship looks dead, but there's something inside it, something big." Jake made his decision. "We're going aboard. Lisa, Ryan, get your gear. We're taking a team over." An hour later, Jake floated through space in his suit. The alien ship grew, larger as they got closer. Up close he could see strange symbols carved into its hull. The metal was black and smooth like glass. "There," Ryan pointed to an opening in the side of the ship. "Looks like a docking bay." They flew inside and found air, old air, but still breathable. Jake removed his helmet and took a careful breath. It smelled like dust and metal. The inside of the ship was enormous. Their flashlights barely reached the ceiling. Strange machines lined the walls covered in the same symbols they saw outside. "This way," Lisa said, following her scanner. "I'm picking up something big toward the center of the ship." They walked through corridors wide enough for trucks. Everything was built for beings much larger than humans. The walls showed pictures of creatures Jake had never seen before. They had 4 arms and stood 12 feet tall. "The architects," Lisa whispered, reading from her translator. That's what they called themselves. They found the ship's main room after an hour of walking. It was huge, with a chair in the center that could have held 3 people. Screens covered every wall, dark and silent. Ryan walked to a panel covered in buttons and switches. "Captain, I think I can turn some of this on. The power source is still working somehow." "Do it," Jake said. Ryan touched a crystal on the panel. Suddenly, lights came on everywhere. The screens lit up with symbols and numbers. A voice filled the room, speaking in a language none of them knew. Then the voice changed. It began speaking English. New life forms detected. Scanning neural patterns. Compatibility confirmed. "Welcome, humans." A shape appeared in the air above them. It looked like light made into the form of one of the tall aliens they had seen in the pictures. "I am Terminus. I am the mind of this vessel. I have been waiting for someone like you for 50,000 years. Jake stepped forward. "Who built this ship? What happened to your people?" "The architects built me to end the reign of tyrants. We grew tired of watching young races make the same mistakes. Conquest, slavery, the strong crushing the weak. So they built me to stop such things." The screens around them showed pictures of space battles. Huge fleets of ships fighting, planets burning. Jake saw the alien ship, this ship destroying entire armies. "You were a weapon," Lisa said. "I am the weapon that ends kingdoms." The architects knew they were dying, so they gave me one last mission, to wait for a race that could use my power without becoming what they fought against. More pictures filled the screens. Jake saw the architect's homeworld covered in cities. Then he saw it empty and dead. A plague killed them all. But before, they died. They programmed me to wait, to find someone worthy of my power. Ryan was staring at the control panels. "This technology is incredible. These weapons could destroy entire solar systems." "Yes," Terminus said. "I have weapons that can crack planets, shields that can stop any attack. I can build fleets of smaller ships. All of this power waits for the right commander." Jake felt a chill run down his back. "Why us? Why humans? I have been watching your people through quantum networks that span the galaxy. You fight, yes, but you also protect the weak. You have something the architects had, something most races lose when they gain power. You have conscience. The AI turned to face Jake directly. I offer you command of this vessel. Human Jake Morrison, will you accept the burden of ending kingdoms built on suffering? Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was studying the readouts with wonder and fear. Ryan was already trying to understand the ship's systems. They were explorers, not conquerors. But the galaxy was full of races that were conquerors. If I say yes, what happens? You become the captain of the most powerful ship ever built. You gain the ability to free enslaved worlds and stop tyrants. But you also become responsible for how that power is used. Jake thought about Earth, about humanity's place among the stars. They were new to space, weak compared to the alien empires they had heard about. But maybe that was exactly why they could handle this responsibility. I accept, Jake said. The moment he spoke, the ship changed around them. Systems that had been dormant for thousands of years came online. Jake felt something connect with his mind, like the ship was becoming part of him. Welcome aboard, Captain Morrison, Terminus said. The ship that ends kingdoms is yours to command. 3 months later, the NSS Liberty arrived back at Earth with the ancient ship following behind it. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood at the viewing window of Earth Fleet Command, watching the massive vessel move slowly toward the secret base on Titan. Even from this distance, the ship looked like a mountain floating in space. Are you sure we can control it? Admiral Hayes asked Captain Morrison. Jake stood beside her, still wearing his regular uniform but now carrying the weight of commanding the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The AI Terminus has bonded with me. It won't act without my approval. But Admiral, we need to talk about what's coming. Dr. Lisa Grant was working day and night at the Titan Research Facility. The ancient ship, now called the Kingslayer by Earth Fleet, was parked in the largest hangar ever built. Every day she discovered something new about its technology. The manufacturing systems are incredible, Lisa told her research team. This ship can build other ships, smaller ones, but each one more powerful than our best warships, and the materials it uses don't exist in our science books. She pulled up a display showing the ship's weapon systems. These quantum disruptors can tear apart the bonds between atoms. The gravitational cannons can create black holes. And that's just the basic weapons. Ryan Cooper spent most of his time connected to the ship's systems through a neural interface. The process was painful, but it let him talk directly to Terminus. Through this connection, he learned things that scared him. Captain, Ryan said during one of their meetings, Terminus has been watching the galaxy for 50,000 years. It knows about every alien empire out there. The Corvan hegemony has enslaved 40 different species. The Zeth Collective strips planets bare for resources. There are dozens of others just as bad. Jake studied the star maps Terminus had provided. Red dots marked slave worlds. Yellow dots showed planets being destroyed for mining. The galaxy was full of suffering that humans had never known about. How long before they find out about us? Jake asked. Too late, said Communications Officer Amy Parker, bursting into the room. Sir, I've been monitoring alien transmissions. Word is already spreading. 3 different empires are sending scout ships toward human space. Admiral Hayes called an emergency meeting of Earth's government. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals gathered to hear about humanity's new situation. Jake stood before them with Terminus appearing as a hologram beside him. The secret is out, Jake explained. We're no longer just a small species exploring space. We now have the power to destroy civilizations. That makes us either the biggest threat in the galaxy or the biggest target. One of the presidents stood up. Maybe we should hide the ship. Keep it secret until we understand it better. Terminus spoke for the first time in front of Earth's leaders. Hiding will not work. The Corvan hegemony is already moving a fleet toward your system. They have conquered every species they have encountered. They see you as weak prey. How many ships? Admiral Hayes asked. 300 warships, commanded by Admiral Vec Thurzon. He is known for destroying planets that resist him. He believes humans will surrender when they see his fleet. The room went quiet. Earth's entire navy had only 50 ships, and most of those were exploration vessels like the Liberty. We could try to negotiate, suggested another leader. Jake shook his head. I've studied the Corvin files. They don't negotiate. They demand surrender and take slaves. That's how they've built their empire. Lisa Grant connected to the meeting. From Titan. Sir, I need to tell you something else. The ship's AI has been showing me visions of its past battles. It destroyed the Corvin hegemony once before, about 12,000 years ago. They rebuilt their empire on the bones of their enemies. Then we know they can be beaten, Jake said. Ryan Cooper, still connected to the ship's systems, suddenly went stiff. His eyes glowed with the same blue light as Terminus. When he spoke, his voice carried an echo. The Corvin fleet has entered your outer system. Admiral Thurzin is broadcasting demands for your surrender. He gives you 24 hours. Admiral, Hayes looked at Jake. Captain Morrison, you have command of the most powerful ship ever built. What are your orders? Jake thought about Earth, about humanity's children who deserved a future without alien masters, about all the species across the galaxy living under the boot of empires like the Corvin hegemony. We take the Kingslayer out to meet them, Jake decided. It's time to show the galaxy that the age of conquest is over. Amy Parker received the Corvin demands an hour later. The message was brutal and simple. Surrender the ancient weapon or watch Earth burn. Admiral Thurzin had included videos of planets his fleet had destroyed. Cities turned to glass. Populations marched into slave ships. Typical Corvin diplomacy, Terminus commented. They believe fear is the only language other species understand. Jake stood on the bridge of the Kingslayer as it left Earth's solar system. The ship moved faster than anything humans had ever built, but it was still gentle. Under his command, he could feel Terminus in his mind, showing him the weapon systems coming online. Captain, Lisa said from her science station, the Corvin fleet is massive. 300 ships, just like Terminus said. They're in battle formation. Any sign? They want to negotiate? Jake asked. Amy checked her communications. No, sir. Admiral Thurzin is demanding we surrender immediately. He says he'll give humanity a quick death if we comply. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Corvin ships were spread across space like a metal cloud. Each one was built for war, covered in weapons and armor. They had crushed dozens of civilizations with fleets just like this one. Open a channel to the entire galaxy, Jake ordered. It's time to make an announcement. Amy's fingers flew over her controls. Channel open, sir. Every species with communication technology will hear this. Jake took a deep breath. What he said next would change everything. This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth, commanding the vessel, once known as the ship that ends kingdoms. To every empire built on slavery and conquest, to every tyrant who crushes the weak, your time is over. The galaxy has a new protector now. The Corvin fleet began to move forward, expecting easy victory. They were about to learn they were very wrong. Admiral Vec Thurzin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human ship approach on his screens. The vessel was certainly large, but he had destroyed larger ships before. His fleet of 300 warships had crushed every enemy they had ever faced. Foolish humans, Thurzin growled to his officers. They think one old ship can stand against the might of the hegemony. Today they learn why we rule 40 worlds. The Corvin admiral was 12 feet tall with gray skin and 4 powerful arms. Scars covered his face from 100 battles. He had never lost a fight, and he did not plan to start today. On the Kingslayer, Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet spread out in attack formation. Each Corvin ship was built like a weapon, covered in gun turrets and missile pods. Together, they carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Captain, Lisa Grant reported from her science station, their lead ships are charging weapons. I'm reading energy levels that could crack a moon. Ryan Cooper, still connected to the ship's systems through his neural link, felt Terminus stirring in his mind. The ancient AI was waking up weapons that had slept for thousands of years. The ship is ready, Captain, Ryan said, his voice carrying an echo from his connection to Terminus. All weapon systems are online, shields at maximum power. Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him. In the next few minutes, he would either save humanity or watch Earth burn. There was no middle ground with the Corvin hegemony. "Open a channel to Admiral Thurzan," Jake ordered. Amy Parker worked her controls. "Channel open, sir." Thurzan's scarred face appeared on the main screen. His yellow eyes burned with hatred and confidence. Behind him, Jake could see other Corvin, officers preparing for battle. "Human," Thurzan snarled. "You have wasted my time long enough. Surrender now and I will kill you quickly. Resist and I will take your entire species as slaves." Jake stared back at the alien commander. "Admiral, you're looking at the ship that ended your empire 12,000 years ago. The only reason your species still exists is because the architects showed mercy. I might not be so generous." Thurzan laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "That is ancient history, human. Today my fleet will turn your ship into scrap metal and your world into ash." "Then come and try," Jake said quietly. The channel closed. For a moment, space was silent except for the hum of engines and charging weapons. Then Admiral Thurzan gave the order to attack. 300 Corvin warships opened. Fire at once. The space between the fleets lit up with energy beams, plasma bolts, and nuclear missiles. Enough destruction to level continents streamed toward the Kingslayer. The ancient ship's shields absorbed everything without even flickering. "Impossible," Thurzan whispered, watching his fleet's best weapons fail to scratch the human vessel. Jake felt Terminus in his mind, offering him the ship's weapons. He could feel the quantum disruptors powering up, the gravitational cannons aligning with targets. The ship wanted to fight. "Fire!" Jake commanded. The Kingslayer's first shot was a beam of pure energy that passed through 3 Corvin ships like they were made of paper. The vessels simply disappeared, turned into clouds of atoms scattered across space. The second shot created a tiny black hole in the middle of the enemy formation. 12 ships were pulled into it before the gravity well collapsed, leaving nothing behind. "What witchcraft is this?" Thurzan screamed, watching his proud fleet die around him. The ancient ship moved through the Corvin formation like a shark among fish. Its weapons reached out and touched enemy vessels, unmaking them at the molecular level. Shields that had protected. The Corvin fleet for decades meant nothing against technology from the dawn of galactic civilization. Lisa Grant watched her instruments in amazement. "Captain, we're not just destroying their ships, we're erasing them. These weapons work at the quantum level." The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, only 23 Corvin ships remained out of the original 300. They fled toward the edge of the solar system, their engines screaming as they ran for their lives. Admiral Thurzan's flagship was one of the survivors, but barely. Half his ship was gone, cut away by a weapon that turned matter into energy. His bridge was open to space, held together by emergency shields. "This is not over, human," Thurzan broadcast as he retreated. "The hegemony will return with 1,000 ships, 10,000 ships. We will not forget this insult." Jake watched the surviving enemy vessels disappear into hyperspace. He felt no joy in the victory, only the heavy weight of what it meant. "Sir," Amy Parker said, "we're receiving communications from all over the galaxy. Word of the battle is spreading fast. The messages were coming in from dozens of species. Some were pledging alliance with humanity. Others were begging for protection from their oppressors. A few were threats from other empires, warning Earth not to interfere in their affairs." Ryan Cooper disconnected from the ship's systems, his face pale from the experience. "Captain, Terminus showed me something during the battle. The Corvin hegemony has 40 slave worlds. When news of this defeat reaches them, some of those worlds are going to rebel." "That's not our problem," Jake started to say, then stopped. If those rebellions failed, millions would die in retaliation. The hegemony would make examples of entire planets. Lisa Grant was studying the readings from their weapons. "Sir, the power we just used was only a fraction of what this ship can do. We could have destroyed their entire fleet in seconds." "Then why didn't we?" Jake asked. "Because," Terminus spoke through the ship's speakers, "destroying an entire fleet leaves no witnesses. Fear is a weapon too, Captain Morrison. Let them spread word of what they saw here. Let the galaxy know that the ship that ends kingdoms has awakened. Jake looked out at the stars, knowing that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer a small species exploring the edges of space. They were now the most powerful force in the galaxy, whether they wanted to be or not. The Corvin survivors would reach their home worlds in 3 days. When they did, every empire in the galaxy would know that the ancient weapon had chosen new masters. The age of conquest was ending, but Jake wondered what would take its place. 2 weeks after the battle with the Corvin fleet, the galaxy was in chaos. News of humanity's victory had spread to every corner of space, and the reactions were exactly what Captain Jake Morrison had feared. On the bridge of the Kingslayer, Amy, Parker read through the hundreds of messages flooding in from across the galaxy. Captain, the Zeth Collective has recalled all their fleets to defend their core systems. The Andromedan Trade Federation is requesting immediate diplomatic talks. And sir, we're getting distress calls from at least 30 different worlds. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. He had not slept well since the battle. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Corvin ships dissolving into nothing. The power to destroy civilizations was not something any person should carry. Dr. Lisa Grant entered, the bridge carrying a datapad filled with troubling information. Captain, I've been studying the ship's quantum communication networks. Terminus has been watching everything that happens in the galaxy. The suffering out there is worse than we imagined. She showed Jake images from worlds across space. Corvin, slave camps where alien children worked in mines. Zeth factories that processed entire planets into raw materials. Trading posts where sentient beings were bought and sold like cattle. How many species are enslaved? Jake asked. Over 200, Lisa answered. Some have been slaves for so long they don't remember being free. And Captain, many of these slave worlds are starting to rebel. They think we're coming to save them. Ryan Cooper was permanently connected to the ship's systems now. The neural interface had changed him, making his eyes glow with the same blue light as Terminus. He spent most of his time in the ship's data core, learning about galactic history that no human had ever known. Captain? Ryan said, his voice carrying the echo of the ship's AI. Terminus is showing me something important. 3 major empires are forming an alliance against us. They're calling it the Stability Pact. Jake looked at the tactical display Ryan projected. The Corvin hegemony, the Zeth Collective, and the Andromedan Trade Federation were moving their fleets toward a meeting point near the galactic core. How many ships? Jake asked. Over 1,000, Ryan replied. They're planning to attack Earth while we're away helping the rebel worlds. The situation was getting worse by the hour. Small species were declaring independence from their oppressors, expecting humanity to protect them. But Earth's government wanted Jake to bring the Kingslayer home to defend human space. We can't be everywhere at once, Jake said to his crew. If we go help the rebels, Earth is defenseless. If we stay to protect Earth, millions of slaves will die when their rebellions fail. Terminus spoke through the ship's speakers. Captain Morrison, this was always the burden of wielding ultimate power. The architects faced the same choice 50,000 years ago. Every decision you make will determine the fate of billions. Amy, Parker suddenly looked up from her communication station. Sir, we have a problem. The Andromedan Trade Federation is requesting permission to send a diplomatic ship to meet with us. They want to negotiate. Jake considered this. The Andromedans were different from the Corvins. They conquered through economics rather than military force, but their empire was just as cruel. They owned entire star systems, treating planets like factories and populations like workers. Let them come, Jake decided. But we meet them in neutral space, not near Earth. 3 days later, the Kingslayer waited at the edge of an empty star system. The Andromedan diplomatic vessel approached slowly, broadcasting peace signals on all frequencies. It was a beautiful ship, covered in gold and crystal, designed to impress rather than fight. The Andromedan ambassador was a tall, thin being with silver skin and large black eyes. She called herself Director Vale and spoke perfect English, which should have been Jake's first warning. Captain Morrison, Director Vale said as she stood in the Kingslayer's meeting room. The Trade Federation comes in peace. We have no desire for conflict with humanity. Then why are you building an alliance with the Corvan hegemony? Jake asked directly. Director Vale smiled, showing teeth like polished metal. Merely a defensive agreement. Your ship has upset the balance of power in the galaxy. Surely you understand our concern. Lisa Grant was scanning the ambassador with hidden sensors. Something was wrong with the readings, but she could not figure out what. We're prepared to offer humanity full membership in the Trade Federation, Director Vale continued. Your species could become very wealthy. All we ask in return is that you limit your use of that ancient weapon. Jake stood up from his chair. You want us to let you continue enslaving entire civilizations in exchange? For money? We prefer to call it economic partnership, Director Vale said smoothly. The galaxy has worked this way for thousands of years. Why change what functions well? That was when Amy Parker detected the hidden signal. Captain, she's transmitting our location to someone. There are ships moving toward us. Director Vale's smile became cold. I tried to negotiate, human, but your species is too primitive to understand galactic politics. The diplomatic ship suddenly exploded in a burst of light and metal. It had been a bomb, designed to destroy both vessels and make it look like an accident. But the Kingslayers' shields absorbed the blast without even flickering. Assassination attempt, Ryan Cooper reported, his connection to Terminus showing him the truth. The Federation never intended to negotiate. They wanted to kill you and claim we attacked first. Jake felt anger building in his chest. These beings thought they could murder him and then blame humanity for the violence. They had made the same mistake as the Corvans, believing that humans could be intimidated or tricked. Terminus, Jake said quietly. Show me the Federation's assets in this sector. The ship's AI highlighted dozens of targets throughout nearby star systems, trading posts, factory ships, mining operations, and slave processing centers. All of them were symbols of the Federation's economic empire. Captain, Lisa warned, if we attack Federation assets, we'll be starting a war. Jake looked at the images of slave workers in Federation factories, children who had never seen sunlight, laboring to build ships for their masters, entire species reduced to property in the Federation's vast economic machine. They started the war when they tried to kill me, Jake said. Terminus, begin targeting Federation installations. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when someone tries to assassinate Earth's representatives. The Kingslayer's weapons began charging, ready to dismantle another empire built on the suffering of others. Across the galaxy, rebellion was spreading, and the ancient ship that ended kingdoms was about to fulfill its purpose once again. 6 months after the assassination attempt, the galaxy looked completely different. The Kingslayer floated in space above a blue and green world that had been a slave planet just weeks before. Now it was free, and its people were building their first democratic government. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching children play in fields that used to be work camps. The sight should have made him happy, but the weight of command had changed him. His hair had turned gray, and lines marked his face. The burden of wielding ultimate power aged a person quickly. Captain, Amy Parker reported from her station, we're receiving the final surrender message from the Corvan hegemony. Admiral Thurzin is dead. Their government has agreed to free all slave worlds and pay repair costs to the species they conquered. Jake nodded without emotion. The Corvan Empire had fallen 3 months ago when their home fleet tried to retake their slave worlds. The battle had lasted 8 minutes. Now 40 worlds were free, and their former masters were learning what it meant to live without power over others. Dr. Lisa Grant approached with her final report on the ship's technology. Captain, we've successfully created 12 smaller ships using the Kingslayer's manufacturing systems. Each one has a human crew, but also volunteers from the freed worlds. It's the first truly mixed fleet in galactic history. The new ships were not as powerful as the Kingslayer, but they were still more advanced than anything the old empires had built. Jake had given them to the Galactic Liberation Council, a group of representatives from freed worlds who were trying to build something better than the empires they had replaced. Ryan Cooper had changed the most of all. His constant connection to Terminus had made him something between human and artificial intelligence. His body was still flesh and blood, but his mind could process information like a computer. He served as the bridge between human judgment and the ship's vast knowledge. "The Zeth Collective has collapsed completely," Ryan reported, his voice carrying the echo of Terminus. "Their core worlds are asking for protection. They're afraid their former slaves will seek revenge." Jake had seen this pattern repeat across the galaxy. When empires fell, their former victims sometimes became as cruel as their oppressors. Breaking the cycle of revenge was harder than winning battles. "What about the Trade Federation?" Jake asked. "Director Vale's replacement has agreed to our terms," Amy replied. "They're releasing all slave contracts and converting their factory worlds into normal colonies. The transition is messy, but it's happening." The Trade Federation had been the hardest empire to defeat because they did not rely on military force. Their power came from controlling trade routes and owning entire economies. Jake had been forced to use the Kingslayer's manufacturing systems to flood the galaxy with free technology, making the Federation's monopolies worthless overnight. A new message appeared on the main screen. It was from Earth, showing Admiral Hayes and the leaders of humanity's government. They looked older too, worn down by the responsibility of suddenly being the most powerful species in the galaxy. "Jake," Admiral Hayes said, "the final meeting of the Galactic Liberation Council is ready to begin. Representatives from 200 species are waiting for you." Jake had been avoiding this moment for weeks. The galaxy's freed peoples wanted him to become their permanent leader, to use the Kingslayer to enforce peace across the stars. But he knew that would just create another empire, even if it started with good intentions. "I'll be there soon," Jake replied. An hour later, Jake stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. Representatives from every free world filled the massive meeting hall that had been built on the neutral world of Haven. Some were human-like, others were completely alien, but all of them looked to him with hope and expectation. "People of the Yo Galaxy," Jake began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "6 months ago, most of your worlds were slaves to empires that saw you as property. Today you are free. But freedom is not something that can be given by one person or one ship. It must be earned and protected by all of us working together." A representative from one of the former Corvin slave worlds stood up. "Captain Morrison, without the Kingslayer, we would still be in chains. Will you stay and protect us from those who would rebuild the old empires?" Jake had known this question was coming. He looked out at the hundreds of faces watching him, all hoping he would say yes. They wanted him to be their eternal protector, their guardian against any threat. "The ship will stay," Jake said finally, "but not as your ruler or your protector. The Kingslayer will patrol the galaxy, watching for empires that try to rise again. But the responsibility for keeping your worlds free belongs to you." He gestured to Ryan Cooper, who stood beside him with his glowing blue eyes. "Ryan Cooper will be the ship's new commander. His connection to Terminus makes him the best choice to carry this burden. I'm going home to Earth." The hall erupted in surprised voices. Some representatives protested, saying Jake could not abandon them. Others understood that true freedom meant not depending on one person or one ship to solve every problem. Ryan stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of both human will and ancient wisdom. "The ship that ends kingdoms will continue its mission, but we will not rule you. We will only act against those who try to rebuild empires based on conquest and slavery." Jake left the hall quietly while the debate continued. Outside, Lisa Grant and Amy Parker were waiting for him beside a small human ship that would take them home. "Think they'll be okay without us?" Amy asked. Jake looked up at the stars, where the Kingslayer hung like a guardian angel over the new, galactic civilization. "They have to be. That's what freedom means." The three humans climbed aboard their ship and began the long journey back to Earth. Behind them, the galaxy was learning to govern itself without emperors or kings. It would not be easy, and there would be mistakes. But for the first time in thousands of years, the weak did not have to fear the strong. The ship that ends kingdoms continued its eternal patrol, ready to act if tyranny ever tried to rise again. But its greatest victory was not destroying empires. It was teaching the galaxy that some things were more important than power. Freedom was one of those things.